right, chapter 31. Here we must notice a capital error in those masters to whom we send our children. Not that it has much to do with speaking, but you may see how stupid and unpolished a set of men they are who imagine themselves learned. For in distinguishing the different kinds of speaking, they make two species of causes. One they call that in which the question is about a general proposition without reference to persons and times. The other, that which is confined to certain persons and times, being ignorant that all controversies must have relation to the force and nature of the controversies must have relation to the force and nature of the general position. For in that very cause which I mentioned, the person of Optimus or Decius has nothing to do with the common arguments of the orator, since the inquiry has unrestricted references to the question in general, whether he seems deserving of punishment who has slain a citizen under a decree of the Senate for the preservation of his country, when such a deed was not permitted by laws. There is indeed no cause in which the point that falls under dispute is considered with reference to the parties to the suit, and not from arguments relating to such questions in general. But even in those very cases where the dispute is about fact, as whether Publius Decius has taken money contrary to law, the arguments both for the accusation and for the defense must have reference to the general question and the general nature of the case, as to show that the defendant is expensive. The arguments must refer to luxury, that he is covetous of another's property, to avarice, that he is seditious, to turbulent and ill designing citizens in general, that he is convicted by many proofs to the general nature of evidence, and on the other side, whatever is said for the defendant must of necessity be abstracted from the occasion and individual and referred to the general notions of things and questions of the kind. These perhaps to a man who cannot readily comprehend in his mind all that is in the nature of things may seem extremely numerous to come under consideration when the question is about a single fact, but it is the number of charges and not of modes of defense or topics for them that is infinite. 32. When there is no contest about facts, the questions of the nature of facts, if you reckon them from the number of the parties accused, are innumerable and intricate, if from the facts themselves very few and clear. For if we consider the case of Mancinius so as referring to Mancinius alone, then whenever a person whom the chief herald has surrendered to the enemy is not readmitted into his country, a new case will arise. But if what gives rise to the controversy be the general question, whether to him whom the chief herald has surrendered, if he has not been readmitted into his country, there seems to be a right of return. The name of Mancinius has nothing to do with the mode of speaking upon it or the arguments for the defense. And if the merit or demerit of the person give rise to any discussion, it is wholly beside the question, and the part of the speech referring to the question must of necessity be adapted to such arguments in general. I do not reason upon these subjects for the purpose of confuting learned teachers, although those merit reproof who, in their general definition, describe this sort of cause as relating to persons and times. For although times and persons are incident to them, yet it should be understood that causes depend upon them, but upon the general question. Not upon them, but upon the general question. But this is not my business, for we ought to have no contest with that sort of people. It is sufficient that this only should be known, that they have not even attained a point which they might have effected amid so much leisure. Even without any experience in affairs of the forum, that is, they might have distinguished the general natures of cases and explained them a little more accurately. But this, as I said, is not my business. It is mine, and much more yours, my friends Cotta and Sulpicius, to know that as their artificial rules now stand, the multitude of causes is to be dreaded, for it is infinite if they are referred to persons, so many men, so many cases, but if they are referred two general questions. They are so limited and few that studious orators of good memory and judgment ought to have them digested in their minds, and I may almost say learned by heart, unless perhaps you imagine that Lucius Crassus took his notion of that famous cause from Manius Curius personally, and thus brought many arguments to show why, though no posthumous son was born, yet Curius ought to be their heir of Coponius. The name of Coponius or of Curius had no influence at all on the array of arguments advanced or on the force, the nature of the question. The whole controversy as regarded to all affairs and events of that kind in general, not to particular occasions or names. As the writings was thus, if a son is born to me and he died before, etc., then let him be my heir. And if a son was not born, the question was whether he ought to be heir who was appointed heir on the death of the son.